time is 5:30 p.m. and this meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum and the meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. We are here this evening to conduct a public hearing for the improvement required schools, Briargate Elementary and Ridgemont Elementary. I will now turn it over to you, Dr. Dupree.
Yes, ma'am. We've done several reports on this in the last couple of months, and we're pleased that this evening Phyllis will be doing what's hopefully the final report for these schools, and we're going to seek board action on these two plans also this evening, along with a brief update we'll provide after Phyllis is finished about some news from TEA. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Hill.
Good evening, President Tassan, Dr. Dupree, and board members. As Dr. Dupree indicated, hopefully this is our final review for these two campuses. We've been looking at their turnaround plans for a few weeks now, and I would like to briefly review the steps in turnaround planning. They did a deep data analysis, which was longitudinal, a needs assessment. They have gathered stakeholder feedback prior to development of the plans and then after the plans development. They determined the root cause for a trend of underperformance. This is our required public hearing with our recommendation of approval of the plans, and then the plans will be submitted to Texas Education Agency. The root cause of underperformance for both of these schools is very similar. There has been a history of underperformance with students and a lack of rigorous Tier 1 instruction, which has caused some students to struggle to perform on their academic grade level. Therefore, a number of students need intervention to close their academic gaps. And as you will recall, we implemented EDGE last year as a proactive measure before the state called us to develop a turnaround plan, and with EDGE was some intervention and a complete restaffing of the school. Tonight we'll be looking at some refinements for continuous improvement that we're adding to the EDGE model. As you look at this slide, these are the components of the EDGE model that we have previously been reviewing, with the restaffing of the school, the master and mentor teacher model after rigorous hiring, and professional development in the FIT, which is a framework for intentional teaching, Club EDGE to support families, flexible grouping and tutoring for intervention, increased physical activity to try to address some of the behavioral issues to give students an outlet, and some facility upgrades. As we look at both of these plans, there are some refinements that are common to both of the schools. Each school would have a half-time behavior interventionist and a half-time social worker. This would actually be one person filling each position, working half-time split between each school. A lead master teacher. That lead master teacher would rotate in the master teacher's classrooms of each grade level, relieving the master teacher to go and observe or support other teachers in her grade level or his grade level, and a strategic planner who would help to ensure that data for student performance is followed and that interventions are provided to students in areas where they are needed. Each school also has additional refinements that are unique to that campus. At Briargate, we are proposing an additional literacy interventionist. That's our leveled literacy intervention, and it serves kindergarten through 5th grade. We find that at Briargate, one of our major learning obstacles is to have students reading on grade level, and more students need intensive intervention than we have the ability to provide at this time. That's why we want an additional interventionist. At Ridgemont, we have a larger campus and a bilingual population. So we want a response to intervention teacher or coach, which would help us to ensure that all students are given their appropriate accommodations to intervene and bring them to grade level. Writing is also a struggle at this campus, and we would like to improve both the teaching of writing and students' performance. This writing teacher would be an expert who would provide modeled instruction for teachers, teaching students before the teachers so that they could observe and then go back and individually implement, as addition to providing intervention to students. We did gather feedback on these two plans. There is overlap. For example, I could be a parent and a community member, or a staff member and a parent, and vice versa. So we had a very good response to our survey for the turnaround plans. It was provided both online and in hard copy. It went home to students. Then all of the results were entered. We had 373 participants for Briargate, 445 participants for Ridgemont. That's a very healthy response. I would like to call your attention to the community response at Briargate, 89%, and that was basically around the teachers' increased professional development, and that is something that goes along with the stipends. We have found that although we are recommending that the board approve these refinements and additions to the EDGE model for continuous improvement, regardless of the rating of the campuses, and we will not receive those ratings until August, we're recommending that we go ahead and put these things in place. You may also remember that on the very first plan that we gave you, we had added a math interventionist to Briargate, but because that's a much smaller campus, we would like to wait until we get the results on state testing in math, because we do feel that we have sufficiently improved Tier 1 instruction and that may not be necessary. We also have some information that Dr. Dupree has gathered from our state commissioner, and in addition to our making these refinements as a proactive measure, continuing to improve before the state requires us to do so, he may want to share that with you.
So last week I was in Austin with Mrs. Tassan on some legislative matters, and I happened to be in a meeting with the Commissioner of Education where I had brought up our level of concern organizationally about the training requirements that are coming out of TEA. There's a great opportunity that they're providing many principals and assistant superintendents, the principal supervisor. It's a pilot program that they've invited us to participate in, and they're making a $1.8 million investment in it. It's $18,000 per person through the Relay Graduate School of Education. It's a pilot program over the coming year, and they want us to participate, but their audience, their prime audience, are turnaround school principals. And that would include these two schools. But in meeting with the commissioner last week, I told him, I said, I'm not going to ask my principals to do that because they have to invest so many hours and so much time in all the dotting of I's and crossing T's and filling out boxes for these TAIS plans and turnaround plans that it would be untenable to ask them to spend 12 more days in training on top of everything else. Their primary responsibility is to run the school in the most effective way possible to meet the needs of the students. All these requirements are not going to improve student achievement if they're not there to execute on a consistent basis. Without hesitation, he said, then you may consider them enrolled in the program, in the training, and we will waive all requirements for TAIS and turnaround planning for the next, while they're enrolled in that program. It's a 3-year program for our district. They're making a 3-year commitment to us to do this training. And, I mean, he was very serious, and he says, I'll follow up right away. And we got confirmation in writing today from the Accountability Division that these two schools will be able to participate in the relay training and not have to do all the required TAIS updates and planning over the next year. So this will give hundreds of hours of time back to the staff at those schools. The principals both squealed and jumped up and down when I told them about my conversation with the commissioner. And And I just want to acknowledge that I'm very thankful that I had the chance to talk to him about this, because had I not, we would be continuing down this path. But even more, I'm thankful that he really does understand, and I think he's dedicated to truly improving student achievement, not just going through compliance and being punitive. I think he's about it, and the real student, he's dedicated to the students and helping our staff succeed. So we just wanted to share that update. So organizationally, we do think it's in our best interest, and he, we did kind of get from TEA that it's best for the board to go ahead and act on this plan, with the understanding that we'll be following through on it regardless of whether we're in IR or not in these schools. Because as Phyllis says, we believe these are good practices that both of these schools need anyway. But we'll just have the relief of not having to do all the quarterly updates and all of those things as we move down the pike during the coming year.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree and Dr. Hill. We appreciate that update. That is very good news. I know we were excited when we heard about that in Austin. Do we have questions or comments from the trustees? I'm going to give an update on that. Okay. Well, so this is probably the appropriate time to do that since we're getting the plans now. So after Dr. Dupree talked to the commissioner about the paperwork related to TAIS and the follow-ups related to TAIS, he and I also discussed with the commissioner the request or the suggestion that the board attend a 2-day or 16-hour governance training, because we had 2 campuses in IR, and we spoke to him about that and sort of expressed the same sentiment that that this board in particular has had a lot of training, and I stress a lot of training, and even have done presentations ourselves on governance. And so I spoke to him about that, and he suggested the same thing with regard to the board training, that was not something that the board needed to do, certainly not this board, he said specifically, and that he did not expect us to attend that training. So while that is part of our TAIS plan, and of course we certainly are very diligent about getting training and making sure that we know how to govern in a way that helps support student achievement, that is not something that we're required to do under the plan. So yes, we'll share that with the board. So now do we have questions or comments? Mrs. James.
Well, excellent. Thank you for that good news. And I'd like to squeal out loud on behalf of the principals over there. So thank you for following up with the commissioner on those 2 items, because I'm grateful that we can focus our training on the areas that where we most need it, and use our time wisely, both as district leaders and also as board members. So thank you both for following up on all of that. I have one question about the plans, Dr. Hill, that you presented. One of the notes that I had made from the last time we heard a presentation was the need at both campuses, I thought I understood, at both campuses for RTI and Tier 3 interventions and so forth. And I noticed we only have the RTI coach at one of the campuses recommended for addition. Is that accurate, or do we?
Yes, ma'am, that's accurate. Our enrollment is lower at Briargate, and both campuses have the strategic planner, and then Ridgemont has also the strategic planner and the RTI teacher. Okay. And so we felt that because of the lower enrollment at Briargate and the help of the lead teacher, that we could cover their intervention groups. It's mainly the RTI is to make sure kids have that fluid movement between those flexible groups and receive the small group instruction that's specific to their skill gaps.
Okay, so I thought that I understood that, but I felt that there was a lot of small group Tier 3 intervention needed. So if you guys feel comfortable with this setup, then I just wanted to be sure that that is what you felt comfortable with.
Will you step in front of the microphone, please, ma'am, just so that we get you recorded?
Yeah, as
for
far
those
as Briargate, I feel like we've got a solid plan here. Again, we're grateful for the extra support. We think that EDGE has provided us a great Tier 1 instruction, and that the things that are provided here is going to be that extra part that's going to put us over the top to get us. We can close the gap, I think, with EDGE eventually. This is going to help us address those kids faster, knowing that we're in a timeline to get them to middle school as fast as possible on grade level.
Excellent, thank you.
And actually, Ms. James, Briargate's emphasis, should their math scores not have significant increase, was in math intervention rather than the RTI teacher.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hill. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mrs. Tasson. I was just going to ask you, Dr. Hill, it looks like we need to add about 9 staff between the two schools. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll have 1 behavior interventionist who will split their time between both campuses. We'll have 1 social worker split their time between both campuses. Then each campus will have a lead master teacher. And each campus will have the strategic planner, and then the additional refinements for Briargate and Richmond.
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I think that's really great, and thank you for that. And I would just like to also say, Dr. Dupree and Mrs. Tasson, thank you for going to Austin. I'm so glad you had the opportunity to do that. I really think the commissioner is working really hard to turn the TEA from just a compliance agency to one that can also help be a little more proactive. So, and to your point, Mrs. Tasson and Mrs. James' point about the amount of training, to all the would-be trustee candidates who think you're running for something similar to the PTA, think again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice.
These additional positions are also on top of existing positions through EDGE and Title I, so they are truly additional.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hill. Do we have any other questions or comments from the board members? Okay, if we have none, we're going to move on now to the public comment portion of the hearing. Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on the turnaround plans for Briargate or Ridgemont? Going once, going twice. Okay. With that, we will move on to item 4, which is action item to vote on the 2 turnaround plans that have been presented. May I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we accept the turnaround plans for Briargate and Richmond Elementary Schools as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. James and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Those in favor by show of hands. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
We are adjourned.